Good evening, dear listeners. Tonight, we journey to the mystical land of ancient Egypt, where gods walked among mortals, where magic flowed through the waters of the life-giving Nile, and where stories of divine beings shaped the very fabric of civilization. I am your guide through these ancient tales, these bedtime stories of the Egyptian gods that have survived thousands of years to reach our ears today. The stories I'm about to share were once whispered in the grand halls of temples, told around flickering fires in humble homes along the Nile, and inscribed on papyrus scrolls and temple walls. They speak of creation and destruction, love and betrayal, wisdom and folly. These are the tales that shaped the beliefs and values of one of history's most enduring civilizations. As you listen, imagine yourself beneath a canopy of brilliant stars, the desert air cool against your skin, the ancient gods and goddesses coming alive in your mind's eye. These stories were meant to explain the world, to teach moral lessons, and to connect the people of Egypt to their divine protectors. So close your eyes, if you wish, and let your mind wander back thousands of years to the time of pharaohs and pyramids, to a land where the boundary between the mortal world and the divine realm was as thin as the horizon line where the desert meets the sky at in the beginning. There was only none, the dark, endless waters of chaos. No light, no life. No sound disturbed these primordial depths. Within this formless void existed the potential of all things, waiting to be born, to be given shape and purpose. From these mysterious waters emerged a mound of land, a hill rising from nothingness. Upon this first piece of solid ground stood Adam, the first god, the self-created one. Some say he arose from the waters as a serpent, others as a heron, but all agree that Adam contained within himself the essence of everything that would ever exist. Adam gazed upon the endless waters and felt a profound loneliness. He desired to create, to bring forth life from his solitude. And so, in some tellings, he took his own seed into his mouth and from his spittle created the divine twins, Shu and Tefnut. Shu was air, the breath of life, while Tefnut embodied moisture, the waters of creation distinct from the chaos of none. Go forth, commanded Adam to his children. Create space in the darkness, bring order to chaos. But the vastness of none was overwhelming, and soon Shu and Tefnut became lost in the endless waters. Adam, concerned for his children, sent out his eye to search for them. This eye, a powerful extension of Adam's consciousness, scoured the darkness until, at last, it found the divine twins and brought them back to their father. Overjoyed at their return, Adam wept tears of happiness. Where these divine tears fell upon the primordial mound, the first humans were born, fragile creatures formed from the emotion of a god. Shu and Tefnut embraced, and from their union came two more deities. Geb, the earth, solid and strong, and Nut, the sky, vast and star-spangled. As these divine siblings grew, they too fell in love and wished to be together always. But Shu, their father, had other plans. He separated his children, lifting Nut high above to form the heavens and keeping Geb below as the earth. Though separated, Geb and Nut's love remained undiminished. The earth god would gaze longingly upward, while the sky goddess would stretch her star-adorned body across the cosmos, her fingers and toes touching the horizons. Their separation created the space in which all life would eventually thrive. Yet even separated, Geb and Nut managed to conceive children. From their union came four deities who would shape Egyptian history and mythology: Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. Later, they would be joined by a fifth child, Horus the Elder. And so the world took shape. Adam, sometimes called Ra or Ammonius Ra in later traditions, became the sun god who sailed across Nut's body each day in his magnificent solar bark. Night fell when he descended into the underworld, and dawn broke when he emerged victorious over the forces of chaos each morning. The Egyptians saw this cycle, this daily struggle and triumph, reflected in their own lives and in the yearly flooding of the Nile that brought fertile soil and new life to their lands. Creation was not a single event but an ongoing process, a daily victory of order over chaos, of life over death. As you drift toward sleep, imagine that first dawn, the golden light of Ra spreading across the newly formed lands, the cool breath of Shu rustling through the first plants, the solid ground of Geb beneath your feet, and the vast, star-studded body of Nut arching protectively overhead. This is how the ancient Egyptians understood their world, not as something made long ago and left to its own devices, but as something continually renewed through divine effort and cosmic harmony. Now let us turn to one of the most beloved and tragic tales in Egyptian mythology, the story of Osiris, Isis, and Seth. This is a tale of kingship and betrayal, of love that transcends death, and of justice long delayed but finally served. After creation, Ra established order in the cosmos, but as time passed, he grew weary of ruling over the realm of mortals. Humans had become unruly and disrespectful toward their creator. And so Ra decided to place Osiris, his great-grandson, upon the throne of Egypt. Osiris was everything a king should be: wise, just, and compassionate. He taught humans the arts of agriculture, established fair laws, and showed them how to honor the gods. At his side ruled his sister-wife Isis, whose wisdom and magical knowledge complemented Osiris's strength and vision. Together, they transformed Egypt from a land of strife into a paradise of abundance. But not everyone rejoiced in their rule. Seth, Osiris's brother, grew increasingly jealous of Osiris's power and popularity. Where Osiris was associated with fertile lands and life-giving waters, Seth was lord of the harsh desert, storms, and chaos. Some versions of the tale suggest that Seth also coveted Isis, his brother's wife. Whatever the specific cause, Seth's resentment festered until it transformed into a deadly hatred. One evening, Seth held a lavish banquet and invited Osiris and many other gods. The wine flowed freely, and the atmosphere was one of celebration. During the festivities, Seth unveiled a magnificent chest, inlaid with gold and precious stones. "I shall give this chest as a gift," Seth announced, his voice carrying across the banquet hall, "to whomever fits inside it perfectly." One by one, the guests tried the chest, but it fit none of them. When Osiris's turn came, he reclined inside the beautifully crafted box, unaware that Seth had secretly measured his brother's body while he slept and had the chest made to those exact dimensions. The moment Osiris lay down, Seth and his conspirators slammed the lid shut and sealed it with molten lead. They then threw the chest into the Nile, where the currents carried it out to sea. Osiris, the great king of Egypt, had been murdered by his own brother. Isis was devastated when she learned of her husband's fate. She cut a lock of her hair as a sign of mourning, clothed herself in rags, and set out to find Osiris's body. Her lamentations were so heartrending that all who heard them wept in sympathy. Isis's search took her throughout Egypt and beyond. She questioned everyone she met, from the humblest child to the most exalted deity. Finally, she learned that the chest, containing her husband's body, had washed ashore in the land of Byblos, in what is now Lebanon. There, a magnificent tree had grown around it, encasing Osiris in its trunk. The king of Byblos, admiring the tree's beauty, had cut it down and used it as a pillar in his palace, unaware of the treasure it contained. Using her considerable charm and wisdom, Isis secured a position as nursemaid to the royal children of Byblos. Each night, she would place the youngest prince in the fire, burning away his mortality to make him divine. When the queen discovered this, she screamed in terror, causing Isis to reveal her true identity as a goddess. "I seek only the body of my husband, Osiris, which lies within the pillar of your palace," Isis explained. Moved by her devotion, the king and queen gave her the pillar. Isis extracted the chest containing Osiris's body and returned with it to Egypt. Knowing that Seth would be searching for the body, Isis hid in the marshes of the Nile Delta. There, she used her magical powers to temporarily resurrect Osiris. In their brief reunion, Osiris and Isis conceived a son, Horus, who would later avenge his father. This would be the first posthumous conception in mythology, a testament to Isis's extraordinary magical abilities and her undying love for Osiris. After ensuring the continuation of Osiris's legacy through their son, Isis prepared her husband's body for proper burial. She wrapped him in linen bandages, performed the necessary rituals, and hid the body in the marshes while she went to check on their unborn son. But Seth, while hunting in the marshes, discovered the hidden body of his brother. In a fury, he tore Osiris's body into 14 pieces and scattered them throughout Egypt, thinking that this would prevent Osiris from receiving proper burial rites and entering the afterlife. Undeterred, Isis once again set out, this time to recover each piece of her husband's dismembered body. She traveled the length and breadth of Egypt, using her magic to locate each part. In some tellings, she was aided by her sister Nephthys, who had abandoned her husband Seth in disgust at his actions. Wherever Isis found a piece of Osiris, she buried it and built a shrine, which is why many places in ancient Egypt claim to house a piece of the god. The only part she could not find was Osiris's phallus, which had been thrown into the Nile and eaten by fish. Undaunted, Isis fashioned a replacement from gold and used her magic to complete the reassembly of her husband's body. Then, with the help of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, Isis performed the first mummification. She recited spells, wrapped Osiris in protective amulets, and performed all the rituals that would later become standard in Egyptian funerary practices. Through her efforts, Osiris was reborn, not to the land of the living, but as the lord of the dead, the ruler of the underworld. No longer would death be the end. Through Osiris, it became a transformation, a journey to another realm where the justified dead could live eternally. Meanwhile, Isis gave birth to Horus and raised him in secret, hiding from Seth in the marshes of the Delta. She protected her son with magic and fierce determination, knowing that he was the rightful heir to his father's throne and the hope for justice against Seth. As you drift toward sleep, think of Isis's unwavering devotion, her refusal to accept even death as an obstacle to her love. Think of Osiris, who even in death found a way to create new life and establish a realm where the worthy could find eternal peace. This story reminds us that love and justice may be delayed, but they cannot be ultimately denied. A comforting thought to carry into your dreams. The saga continues with the story of Horus, son of Osiris and Isis, and his epic struggle against his uncle Seth for the throne of Egypt. This tale spans decades and involves not just combat, but legal battles before the divine tribunal, trickery, and tests of character that would determine who would rule the two lands. In the marshes of the Delta, Isis raised her son Horus in hiding, always alert for signs of Seth's hunters. She taught him about his divine heritage and his rightful claim to the throne that had been his father's. More importantly, she instilled in him a burning desire for justice, not merely revenge, but the restoration of Ma'at, the divine order that Seth had violated. As a child, Horus faced dangers both natural and supernatural. Once, a poisonous scorpion stung the young god as he slept. Isis returned to find her son near death, his small body rigid and burning with fever. In her desperation, she called upon Ra himself, stopping the solar boat in its journey across the sky until the sun god took pity on her and sent Thoth, the god of wisdom, to cure Horus with magical incantations. Another time, Seth discovered their hiding place and transformed himself into a serpent to kill the boy. But Horus, even as a child, was vigilant and powerful. He caught the snake and brought it to his mother, who forced Seth to reveal his true form before banishing him. When Horus reached manhood, he left the protective marshes and journeyed to the divine court, where the gods gathered under Ra's authority. There, before the assembled deities, he formally claimed his father's throne and accused Seth of murder and usurpation. Seth, powerful and persuasive, denied the charges and claimed the throne was rightfully his as the strongest of the gods, the only one fit to stand daily in the solar bark and defend Ra against Apophis, the chaos serpent that sought to swallow the sun. Thus began a series of contests and legal proceedings that would last for decades. Some say even 80 years. The divine tribunal, headed by Ra and including such respected figures as Thoth and Shu, was divided. Some gods, particularly the older generation, favored Seth's strength and experience. Others, especially goddesses like Hathor and Neith, supported Horus's legitimate claim. The conflict took many forms. Sometimes Horus and Seth engaged in direct combat, transforming into hippopotami to battle in the waters of the Nile, or taking the forms of men to wrestle on the riverbanks. Sometimes they appeared before the tribunal to argue their cases, with witnesses and evidence presented like a modern courtroom drama. One of the most famous episodes involved a boat race. Seth proposed that they each build a boat of stone, and whoever could sail it successfully across the water would be declared the winner. Horus, guided by his mother's cunning, pretended to accept this clearly impossible challenge, but secretly built a boat of wood painted to look like stone. Seth, confident in his victory, constructed a genuine stone boat that immediately sank, while Horus sailed triumphantly across the water. Enraged by this deception, Seth transformed into a hippopotamus and attacked Horus's boat. Horus defended himself with a harpoon, and would have killed his uncle had not Ra intervened, declaring that divine blood should not be shed. Another famous contest involved a test of who could remain transformed as a hippopotamus underwater the longest. Seth, Lord of Chaos and the harsh desert, was less comfortable in the water than Horus, who had been raised in the marshes. When Seth surfaced for air, Isis had the perfect opportunity to kill him with her harpoon, but she hesitated, unwilling to slay her own brother. This mercy enraged Horus, who in his fury cut off his mother's head, replacing it with that of a cow until Thoth restored Isis's proper form. The most disturbing episode in their long conflict involved a night when Seth invited Horus to his house, seemingly to reconcile. During the night, Seth attempted to sexually dominate Horus, believing this would prove Horus's weakness and unsuitability for kingship. But Horus, again warned by his mother's foresight, caught Seth's seed in his hand and threw it into the marshes. Later, Horus secretly put his own seed on lettuce, which Seth unknowingly consumed. When the gods gathered again, Seth boasted of his dominance over Horus. Thoth, ever the voice of wisdom and truth, called forth the seed of both gods to testify. Seth's seed answered from the marshes where it had been discarded, while Horus's seed responded from within Seth himself, humiliating the desert god before the entire divine court. Despite these victories for Horus, Ra remained reluctant to grant him the throne, valuing Seth's strength and experience. Finally, Osiris himself sent a letter from the underworld, reminding the tribunal that justice must prevail or the cosmic order would collapse. He threatened that if justice were denied, he would send the dead, who now outnumbered the living, to the realm of the living, reversing the proper order of things. This dire warning finally turned the tide. Horus was declared the rightful king of Egypt, awarded the white and red crowns of the two lands. Seth was forced to concede defeat, though in recognition of his strength and abilities, he was given positions of honor, a place in Ra's solar bark where he would defend against Apophis and lordship over the deserts and foreign lands. The coronation of Horus restored Ma'at, divine order and justice, to Egypt. The young god ascended to his father's throne, while Osiris ruled the underworld, judging the souls of the dead. Seth, though diminished, still held crucial cosmic roles, channeling his chaotic nature toward defending order rather than destroying it. This story, with its complex characters and shifting alliances, reflects the Egyptian understanding that life is rarely simple, that even the gods themselves can embody contradictions. Seth is both villain and defender, Isis both perfect mother and imperfect goddess, Horus both victim and victor. As you fall deeper toward sleep, consider how this ancient tale reminds us that justice, while sometimes delayed, ultimately prevails. Think of Horus's perseverance through decades of struggle, his growth from protected child to worthy king. Perhaps these thoughts will inspire your own patience and determination when you face challenges in the waking world. Now let us follow the sun god Ra on his nightly journey through the perilous underworld, a voyage he undertakes every night after setting in the west, before being reborn at dawn in the east. This cosmic cycle was central to Egyptian understanding of life, death, and rebirth. Each evening, as the sun appears to sink below the western horizon, Ra's solar bark, his magnificent ship, enters the mouth of Nut, the sky goddess. This marks his passage from the visible world into the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. Here, in this shadowy realm below the earth, Ra must navigate 12 hours of night, each with its own dangers and challenges. As Ra enters the first hour of night, his blazing glory illuminates the darkness. The souls of the dead gather to witness his arrival, hoping to travel in his divine light. Ra transforms in this realm, merging with Osiris to become a unified deity. Ra Osiris, combining the power of the sun with the authority of the underworld's judge. His boat changes too. In the day sky, Ra travels in the Manjet, the morning boat. In the underworld, he sails in the Mesektet, the evening boat. These vessels are populated with various deities who assist in the perilous journey. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, stands ready with scrolls containing magical spells. Isis and her sister Nephthys use their considerable magical powers to protect the sun god. The goddess Mot is present, embodying truth and cosmic order. Most importantly, Seth stands at the prow, ready to defend against the night's greatest danger. For in the depths of the Duat dwells Apophis, the chaos serpent. Each night, this enormous snake, the embodiment of chaos and non-existence, lies in wait to attack Ra's boat and devour the sun god. Should Apophis succeed, creation itself would end, plunging the cosmos back into the formless void of none from which it emerged. In the deeper hours of night, Apophis attacks, launching itself at the solar bark. This is when Seth, despite his complicated history with the other gods, proves his value. Using his immense strength and fierce nature, Seth spears Apophis, cuts the serpent into pieces, and drives it back into the darkness. Yet Apophis is never truly defeated. Each night it reforms to attack again, making this cosmic battle eternal. As Ra continues through the hours of night, he witnesses both wonders and horrors. There are fields of peace where the blessed dead live in abundance, tending crops in an idealized version of Egypt. There are also lakes of fire where the condemned suffer, those souls too heavy with evil deeds to pass Osiris's judgment. In some hours, Ra must contend with gates guarded by fearsome serpents or pass through narrow corridors where other dangers lurk. At each obstacle, Thoth recites the appropriate spells, and the gates open to allow the solar bark passage. The middle hours of the night are the most dangerous, when darkness is deepest and Apophis is strongest. During these hours, Ra's light dims to its weakest point. The Egyptians saw this mirrored in the monthly cycle of the moon, which wanes to near invisibility before growing full again. In the later hours, having survived the worst dangers, Ra begins his transformation toward rebirth. The boat approaches the eastern horizon, and Ra prepares to emerge again as the morning sun. In some tellings, the god Khepri, depicted as a scarab beetle pushing the sun, helps roll the solar disk up into the eastern sky. As dawn approaches in the 12th hour, Ra separates from Osiris, who remains in the underworld to rule over the dead. Ra transforms into Khepri, the morning sun, and is reborn through the body of Nut, emerging into the day sky to begin his journey anew. This daily cycle of death and rebirth was profoundly important to Egyptian theology. Promised that death was not an end but a transformation, just as night inevitably gives way to day. The pharaoh was associated with Ra, and after death was believed to join the sun god on his solar bark, becoming one with the cosmic cycle. Ordinary Egyptians too hoped to go forth by day after death, to join Ra's entourage if they were judged worthy by Osiris. This offered comfort in the face of mortality, the promise that, like the sun, they too might experience rebirth. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself aboard that magnificent solar bark, traveling through the hours of night under the protection of powerful deities. Picture the darkness gradually giving way to the first golden rays of dawn, the triumph of light over darkness, of order over chaos, of life over death. This eternal cycle continues whether we are awake to witness it or not. A reassuring thought as you surrender to sleep, trusting that the morning will indeed come again. Let us turn now to Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, writing, and magic, and to a remarkable tale involving Isis, whose cunning allowed her to acquire divine knowledge that even the gods sought to keep from her. Thoth held a unique position among the Egyptian deities. While many gods were associated with natural phenomena or human experiences, Thoth embodied intellectual pursuits: calculation, writing, science, and magic. The ancient Egyptians credited him with inventing hieroglyphics, that sacred writing system that preserved their culture for millennia. As scribe of the gods, he recorded the judgment of the dead, maintained the divine library, and kept the calendar. Depicted either as an ibis-headed man or sometimes as a baboon, Thoth carried writing implements, a palette, reed pens, and scrolls. His sacred city was Kemenu, known to the Greeks as Hermopolis, where priests maintained thousands of ibises as sacred animals. Thoth's wisdom was said to be boundless. He knew the secrets of the cosmos, understood the movements of the stars, and possessed magical knowledge that could heal any ailment or overcome any obstacle. This knowledge was recorded in a legendary book, sometimes called the Book of Thoth, containing spells of such power that they could animate the inanimate, command the elements, and even compel the gods themselves. This brings us to our tale of Isis and her quest to acquire divine power. Though already a goddess of considerable ability, particularly in healing and protection magic, Isis sought the ultimate source of power, the secret name of Ra. Names held immense power in Egyptian thought. While a god might be called by many epithets and titles, each deity possessed a true secret name that contained their essence and power. Knowledge of this name would grant control over the god, a dangerous prospect indeed. Ra, supreme among the gods, guarded his secret name jealously. Yet Isis, motivated by her desire to protect her son Horus and secure his claim to Egypt's throne, devised a plan to learn this most protected of secrets. Each day, Ra sailed across the sky in his solar bark. As the aging sun god grew older, he began to drool, and drops of his divine saliva would sometimes fall to earth. Isis collected this saliva and mixed it with clay from the Nile, molding it into the form of a serpent. She placed this magical creature along Ra's daily path. As Ra's boat sailed overhead, the serpent struck, injecting divine venom into the sun god. Since the serpent was made from Ra's own divine essence, no cure could be found among the gods. The poison spread through Ra's body, causing him excruciating pain. His limbs trembled, sweat poured from his brow, and fire seemed to course through his veins. The divine physicians, including Thoth himself, tried every remedy they knew, but nothing could counter this unique venom. As Ra's suffering intensified, Isis approached the solar bark. "Great Ra," she said, her voice gentle with concern. "You are suffering terribly. Perhaps I might help, for I know many healing spells taught to me by my father Thoth." Ra, desperate for relief, welcomed her aboard the solar bark. Isis examined the wound and nodded gravely. "I can heal this poison," she declared, "but my magic works through the power of names. To cast out the venom, I must call you by your true name, the secret name that contains your essence." Ra hesitated, knowing the power he would surrender. "Surely my many names are enough," he suggested. "I am Ra, Khepri, Adam, Ammonius Ra, Horikti. These are the names by which mortals and lesser gods know you," Isis replied. "But to extract this poison, I require your secret name, the one you have never revealed." As the poison intensified, Ra's resistance weakened. Finally, in private, he whispered his true name into Isis's ear. With this ultimate knowledge, Isis cast her spell, drawing the venom from Ra's body and healing the sun god completely. But now Isis possessed knowledge that made her almost equal to Ra in power. With his secret name, she could bend even the supreme deity to her will. Rather than abuse this power, however, Isis used it primarily to protect her son Horus and secure his eventual victory over Seth. The knowledge passed from Isis to Horus, making him one of the most powerful deities in the pantheon. Thoth, witnessing Isis's cunning and responsible use of power, developed a special relationship with the goddess. In many temples, they were depicted together, combining their magical knowledge for healing and protection. When Horus was poisoned as a child, it was Thoth whom Isis called upon for help, and together they restored the divine child to health. Thoth's wisdom extended beyond magic and medicine. He was credited with establishing the principles of mathematics, astronomy, engineering, and rhetoric. In his role as mediator, he helped resolve the 80-year conflict between Horus and Seth, finding a solution that preserved cosmic balance while honoring legitimate claims to power. The Egyptians believed that Thoth authored numerous sacred texts, most of which were kept in temple libraries accessible only to initiated priests. These books supposedly contained knowledge of cosmic mysteries, medical treatments, magical procedures, and even the secrets of life and death themselves. One of these books became legendary even in ancient times. The Book of Thoth was said to contain spells of such potency that merely reading certain passages aloud could bring statues to life, command weather, or allow communication with animals. The book's existence became the subject of tales and warnings, with stories claiming that unauthorized readers met terrible fates for daring to access divine knowledge without proper preparation. In one such tale, a prince named Neferkapta discovered the location of this book, submerged in the Nile within nested boxes guarded by serpents and scorpions. Despite warnings, Neferkapta retrieved the book and learned its spells, gaining extraordinary powers. However, the gods punished his presumption by drowning his wife and son. Grief-stricken, Neferkapta committed suicide, and the book was buried with him. The story continues with another seeker, Seton Kamwas, who stole the book from Neferkapta's tomb. After experiencing a series of increasingly disturbing magical events and illusions, including marrying a beautiful woman who transformed into a decomposing corpse in his arms, Seton returned the book to its rightful place. These cautionary tales reflected Egyptian beliefs about the proper channels for accessing divine knowledge. Wisdom and magical power were not to be seized by force or stolen through trickery, but acquired through legitimate means, proper initiation, ritual purification, and divine sanction. Thoth was believed to extend his protection to those who sought knowledge through appropriate channels. Scribes would pour a drop of water as a libation to Thoth before beginning their writing, acknowledging him as the source of their craft. Physicians invoked him before preparing medicines. Astronomers consulted texts attributed to him when calculating calendar dates and stellar movements. As you grow drowsy and your thoughts begin to drift, consider the different approaches to wisdom represented by Thoth and Isis. Thoth acquired knowledge through patience, study, and divine insight, building his wisdom systematically over countless years. Isis, faced with urgent need to protect her son, used cunning and determination to acquire the specific knowledge she required. Both approaches have their place in human experience. Sometimes we must patiently study and learn, building our understanding brick by brick like the temples of ancient Egypt. Other times, when necessity presses, we must be resourceful and bold, seeking creative solutions to immediate problems. Let these divine examples guide your own pursuit of wisdom, whether through patient study or creative problem-solving. And as you fall into sleep's embrace, imagine the ibis-headed Thoth recording your thoughts in his great book, preserving them for the day to come. Now we turn to a darker tale, one that begins with divine rage but ends with celebration, music, and sacred intoxication. This is the story of how Ra's fury nearly destroyed humanity, and how the cleverness of the gods saved both mortals and the divine order itself. In the early days of creation, after Ra had established kingship on earth and taught human civilization, the people began to plot against their creator. Whether from ingratitude, pride, or simple forgetfulness of divine beneficence, humans whispered seditious thoughts and contemplated rebellion against Ra's authority. Ra was not unaware of these murmurings. From his solar bark sailing across the sky, he observed humanity's growing insolence and felt both hurt and anger rising within his divine heart. He called a secret council of the gods to address this troubling development. "The humans I created from my tears," Ra told the assembled deities, "have grown hard-hearted. They whisper against me and plot to overthrow my authority. They have forgotten who gave them life and taught them the arts of civilization." The gods listened solemnly as Ra continued, "I must punish this ingratitude before it grows into open rebellion. Yet I do not wish to destroy my creation entirely." After deliberation, Ra decided to send a manifestation of his burning eye to chastise humanity. This eye took form as the goddess Sekhmet, depicted as a woman with the head of a lioness. Her name means the powerful one, and she embodied the searing, destructive aspect of the sun's heat. Sekhmet descended upon Egypt, magnificent and terrible to behold. Her eyes blazed like the midday sun, Her breath was hot as desert wind, and her roar shook the very foundations of the earth. She was beautiful and terrifying, a perfect embodiment of controlled violence and divine retribution. Ra commanded Sekhmet, "Go forth and punish those who have plotted against me. Let their blood flow as a reminder of the respect due to the gods." Sekhmet took to her task with frightening enthusiasm. She tore through villages and cities, her claws rending flesh, her jaws crushing bone. The desert sands grew dark with blood as humans fled before her, crying out for mercy. But Sekhmet's heart was inflamed with bloodlust, and no plea could move her to compassion. As night fell, she returned to Ra to report her progress. "I have begun the punishment, father," she said, her muzzle still wet with blood. "Tomorrow I shall continue until every rebel lies dead." But during the night, Ra had a change of heart. Seeing the extent of Sekhmet's destruction, he realized that in his anger, he had unleashed a force that might not stop until humanity was extinct. The punishment had already exceeded the crime. Now, the challenge was how to recall Sekhmet, who had developed a taste for human blood and would not easily abandon her hunt. Ra summoned Thoth, god of wisdom, to devise a solution. After careful thought, Thoth proposed a plan. He instructed the surviving humans to gather enormous quantities of barley and fruit. These were used to brew thousands of jars of beer, which was then mixed with red ochre to give it the appearance of blood. The mixture was poured out across the fields where Sekhmet would hunt the next morning. When dawn came, Sekhmet eagerly resumed her hunt, still consumed by bloodlust. Finding the fields flooded with what appeared to be blood, she fell upon the liquid, lapping it up enthusiastically. "The humans have been reduced to nothing but blood," she thought, filling the very fields with their essence. But the beer, disguised as blood, began to affect the fearsome goddess. As she consumed more and more of the intoxicating liquid, her eyes grew heavy, her movements languid. The burning rage in her heart gradually subsided, replaced by a warm, pleasant feeling. Sekhmet's fearsome aspect began to soften. Her blood-soaked fur seemed to lighten, her razor claws retracted, and the murderous gleam in her eyes gave way to a gentler gaze. As the intoxication took full effect, Sekhmet transformed. The lioness became a cow, the destroyer became a nurturer, and Sekhmet became Hathor, goddess of love, music, dance, and joy. Where Sekhmet had brought death, Hathor now brought life. Where rage had reigned, pleasure now flowed. Ra, seeing that the plan had worked, sighed with relief. Humanity had been punished, but not annihilated. Divine authority had been asserted, but mercy had prevailed. The cosmos remained in balance. To commemorate this salvation, Ra established a festival in honor of Hathor, during which beer flowed freely and music played without ceasing. This became one of Egypt's most popular celebrations, where people would drink to the point of joyful intoxication, dance until exhausted, and play music to honor the goddess who had transformed from their destroyer to their protector. This tale reveals the complex Egyptian understanding of divine nature. Sekhmet and Hathor were understood to be two aspects of the same divine force, one destructive, one creative, one fueled by rage, one by joy, one bringing death, one nurturing life. The Egyptians recognized that divine power, like natural forces, contained this duality. The scorching sun that could wither crops could also warm the soil and bring forth abundance. In temples dedicated to these goddesses, priests and priestesses would perform daily rituals to maintain cosmic harmony. In Sekhmet's temples, offerings were made to pacify her destructive aspect, particularly during dangerous times like epidemics, which were associated with her arrows of disease. In Hathor's temples, music played constantly, with priestesses skilled in playing the sistrum, a rattle-like instrument whose sound was thought to please the goddess. Interestingly, both goddesses were associated with healing as well. Sekhmet's priests were often physicians, using their knowledge of herbs and surgery to combat the diseases their goddess could send. Hathor's temples included healing sanctuaries where the sick could sleep and receive dreams from the goddess indicating cures for their ailments. The transformation of Sekhmet into Hathor was commemorated not just in annual festivals but in daily temple rituals. Each morning, as the sun rose, priests would greet Sekhmet with careful offerings to ensure her destructive aspect remained contained. As evening approached, celebrations would honor Hathor, with music and dance expressing gratitude for another day of life and joy rather than destruction. This cycle mirrors the Egyptian understanding of existence itself, a constant balance between opposing but complementary forces, each necessary, each potentially dangerous if unchecked, but beautiful and life-sustaining when properly balanced. As you contemplate sleep, consider how this ancient understanding of duality might apply to your own life. Within each of us exist capacities for both creation and destruction, for both rage and joy. Like the gods themselves, we contain multitudes, and wisdom lies in knowing when to express each aspect of ourselves, and when to transform one into the other. The image of the divine child held special significance in Egyptian religious thought. Gods were not only powerful cosmic forces but also vulnerable infants who needed protection and nurturing. This paradox, all-powerful deities experiencing the vulnerability of childhood, created powerful resonances with human experience and offered divine models for the protection of children. Horus the child, or Harpocrates as the Greeks later called him, was depicted as a young boy with a sidelock of hair, the traditional Egyptian hairstyle for children, and his finger to his lips. This gesture, originally representing the hieroglyph for child, was later misinterpreted by Greeks and Romans as a sign for silence, making Harpocrates incorrectly associated with secrecy in later traditions. The mythology of Horus the child begins with his miraculous birth. After Osiris was murdered by Seth, Isis recovered her husband's body and used her magical powers to conceive their son posthumously. Already, this marked Horus as special, a child conceived from a father who dwelled in the realm of the dead. Knowing that Seth would seek to kill any heir of Osiris, Isis gave birth in secret in the marshes of the Nile Delta. In some tellings, she was assisted by Hecate, the frog-headed goddess of childbirth, who helped ease the divine infant into the world. The goddess Tauret, depicted as a pregnant hippopotamus standing upright, also protected the birth, as did Bes, the dwarf god who scared away evil spirits with his fearsome grimace. From his earliest days, Horus faced dangers that resonated with the very real threats to children in ancient Egypt. In a land where infant mortality was high and childhood diseases rampant, the story of a divine child overcoming such perils offered both supernatural protection and emotional comfort to worried parents. One tale recounts how baby Horus was stung by a scorpion while Isis was temporarily away gathering food. Returning to find her child rigid with poison, his small body burning with fever, Isis cried out in such anguish that her voice stopped Ra's solar boat in its journey across the sky. Hearing her distress, Thoth descended from the halted solar bark and taught Isis powerful healing spells. Other versions say that Serket, the scorpion goddess herself, came to help counteract the poison. Through divine intervention, Horus survived this brush with death. This story became the basis for protective spells called Isis knots or Chet amulets, shaped like stylized knots and often made of red stone or glass. These were placed on children's beds to protect them from scorpions, snakes, and other dangers while they slept. Mothers would recite spells invoking Isis's protective power, believing that the goddess who had saved her own divine child would extend her protection to human children as well. Another tale involves Seth discovering Horus's hiding place and sending serpents to kill the child. But Horus, even as an infant, possessed divine power. In some versions, he mastered the snakes, demonstrating his authority over dangerous creatures. In others, he was protected by the magic Isis had woven around their hidden home. As Horus grew from infant to child, Isis taught him about his divine heritage and prepared him for his eventual confrontation with Seth. During this time, he was known as Shed, the Savior, a young god who stood on crocodiles, grasped serpents in his hands, and demonstrated mastery over dangerous animals. This image of the divine child triumphant over danger became a popular protective motif. Sipi of Horus, small stelae showing the child god controlling dangerous animals, were placed in homes to protect the inhabitants, especially children. Water poured over these magical objects was believed to absorb healing properties and was given to sick children as medicine. Horus the child was not the only divine infant in Egyptian mythology. Many major deities had child aspects that were worshipped separately from their adult forms. Khonsu, the moon god, was often depicted as a child with the sidelock of youth, wearing royal insignia. Young Khonsu was associated with time, growth, and healing. Temples dedicated to him included healing sanctuaries where the sick would sleep, hoping for curative dreams sent by the young god. Similarly, Nefertum, son of Ta and Sekhmet, was portrayed as a beautiful child emerging from a lotus flower. Associated with perfumes and pleasant scents, he represented the first sunlight of creation. His child aspect symbolized potential and new beginnings. Perhaps most significant was I, son of Hathor and Horus the Elder. This divine child was depicted playing a sistrum, the rattle-like musical instrument associated with his mother. As a child god of music and joy, I represented the positive emotions that music could evoke. In temples dedicated to Hathor, children would sometimes take the ritual role of I, playing sistra and participating in divine service from a young age. The worship of divine children took special prominence during the Greco-Roman period of Egyptian history, when temples dedicated to Isis nursing the infant Horus, Isis lactans, became particularly popular. These images later influenced early Christian iconography of the Madonna and Child, creating a continuous tradition of divine mother and child imagery that spans thousands of years. For ordinary Egyptians, these stories of divine children served multiple purposes. They sacralized the experience of childhood and parenting, suggesting that in nurturing their children, parents participated in a divine pattern established by Isis and other gods. They provided supernatural protection against the very real dangers that threaten children in a pre-modern world. And they offered comfort to those who had lost children, suggesting that even divine parents faced similar fears and sometimes similar losses. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the protective embrace of Isis surrounding you, the same divine care that sheltered the infant Horus in the marshes. Picture the divine child triumphant over scorpions and snakes, mastering the dangers of the world even in his youth. These ancient images of divine protection have lost none of their power to comfort and reassure across the millennia. In the world of ancient Egypt, words held power beyond mere communication. Names, spells, and sacred utterances were believed to have tangible effects on reality itself. Tonight, we explore this fascinating aspect of Egyptian mythology, the magic inherent in language and how the gods themselves used words to create, transform, and protect. The Egyptian concept of language magic begins with creation itself. In the beginning, according to one creation myth, Ta, the divine craftsman, conceived the world in his heart and brought it into being through the power of his voice. By naming things, Ta caused them to exist. This established a fundamental principle in Egyptian magical thought. To name something was to give it reality and power. This concept extended to personal names, which were considered essential aspects of one's being, not simply labels. Each Egyptian typically had several names, a great name known publicly, and sometimes a little name or nickname used by family and friends. But most important was the true name, kept secret and protected, as knowledge of this name could give others power over the individual. The gods themselves guarded their true names jealously. We've already heard how Isis acquired power by learning Ra's secret name. Another tale tells of how Isis created a serpent from clay and the god's own spittle. When this snake bit Ra, only Isis could cure him, and she demanded his secret name as payment. Reluctantly, Ra whispered his true name to Isis, but only after making her swear that she would reveal it to no one else, not even her son Horus. With this knowledge, Isis became one of the most powerful deities, able to command even Ra himself if necessary, though she used this power sparingly and wisely. The power of names extended to the afterlife as well. In the Book of the Dead, more accurately translated as the Book of Coming Forth by Day, many spells required the deceased to know the names of various gatekeepers, ferrymen, and judges encountered on the journey to the Field of Reeds, the Egyptian paradise. Without this knowledge, the soul might be trapped forever between worlds. One of the most important moments in the judgment of the dead came when the deceased stood before Osiris and the 42 judges of the underworld. Here, they had to recite the negative confession, declaring they had not committed various sins. I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not lied, and so forth. These declarations were not merely reports but magical statements that helped transform the soul into a justified one, worthy of eternal life. Beyond names, Egyptians believed in the power of Heka, often translated as magic, but encompassing a broader concept of authoritative speech and ritual power. Heka was personified as a god, sometimes depicted as a man carrying a staff and knife, symbolizing his ability to implement magical force. Heka was considered a legitimate force of nature, not something supernatural or outside divine order. Gods and authorized humans, particularly priests and physicians, could use Heka to maintain cosmic order, Ma'at, and counteract chaos, Isfet. Magicians were not seen as subversive figures but as skilled practitioners of a recognized cosmic force. Some of the most powerful magical practitioners were the lector priests, or Eriheb, who specialized in ritual recitations. These priests were highly educated, able to read and pronounce sacred texts perfectly, for any mispronunciation could nullify a spell or even cause it to work incorrectly with potentially disastrous consequences. The goddess most associated with magical speech was Isis, whose name itself means throne, and who represented the divine kingship embodied in the pharaoh. Isis was said to know words of power that could heal the sick, protect the vulnerable, and even temporarily resurrect the dead, as she did with Osiris. One story tells of how Isis disguised herself as an old woman to enter the palace of Byblos, where Osiris's body lay hidden in a tamarisk tree that had been incorporated into a pillar. Through her magical skill, she gained the queen's trust and was appointed as nurse to the royal prince. Each night, Isis would place the child in the fire to burn away his mortality, while transforming herself into a swallow and circling the pillar, singing morning songs for Osiris. When the queen discovered Isis placing her child in flames, she screamed in terror, breaking the spell before the child could be made fully immortal. Isis then revealed her true identity and explained her purpose. Moved by the goddess's devotion, the king gave her the pillar containing Osiris's body. This tale illustrates several aspects of Egyptian magical practice: transformation spells, the power of ritual fire for purification, and the importance of properly completed magical procedures. It also shows how magical knowledge separated divine beings from mortals. Isis understood that the fire would not harm but transform the child, while the human queen saw only danger. Magical words were often reinforced by physical components and actions. Amulets inscribed with protective spells were worn by all classes of Egyptian society. These might be crafted in specific shapes, made from materials with symbolic properties, and consecrated through precise rituals. Common forms included the Ankh, symbol of life, the Jed pillar, representing stability, and the Eye of Horus, offering protection. Water was another important component of Egyptian magic. Priests would pour water over statues inscribed with healing spells, collecting the liquid after it had absorbed the magical properties of the sacred words. This charged water would then be consumed by those seeking healing or protection. Even written words themselves were considered magically potent. Hieroglyphs, whose name means sacred carvings, were believed to embody the essence of what they depicted. This is why in some tomb inscriptions, potentially dangerous hieroglyphs, like those representing snakes or scorpions, were depicted with knives cutting them, neutralizing any threat they might pose to the deceased. This belief in the power of written words extended to magical practice. The Egyptians created execration texts, curses written on pottery or figurines representing enemies, which were then ritually broken to magically destroy the foe. Conversely, loving verses inscribed on a bowl from which both partners drank could strengthen a relationship. Some of the most powerful magical texts were kept in the House of Life, a combination of library, scriptorium, and magical workshop attached to major temples. Here, priest scribes copied sacred texts, composed new magical works, and created amulets and protective items for both royal and divine use. Among the most treasured texts were those attributed to Thoth himself, said to contain magic of such potency that most of the spells remained sealed, to be used only in the direst emergencies. One legend claimed that these books contained spells that could control the sun, moon, and stars themselves. Magic so powerful that even the gods feared its misuse. The magical power of words extended to what we might call sympathetic magic, using words and images to create a magical connection between similar things. In healing spells, the patient's condition might be compared to a mythological situation. As Horus was healed when a scorpion stung him in the marshes, so shall patient's name be healed. By invoking the divine precedent, the current situation was magically aligned with the successful mythological outcome. Names held such power that in some cases they could be weaponized. The Book of Overthrowing Apophis, used in daily temple rituals, included instructions to write the name of the chaos serpent on papyrus or wax, then destroy it through various means, burning, trampling, spitting on it, thereby magically weakening Apophis's attacks on Ra's solar bark. Conversely, to be nameless was one of the worst fates imaginable to an Egyptian. Tomb desecrators were threatened with having their names erased from the records of existence, condemning them to a second and final death from which there could be no resurrection. When particularly hated rulers were succeeded, their successors might order their names chiseled from monuments, a practice called damnatio memoriae, in an attempt to magically erase them from history. Not all word magic was destructive or protective. Creation magic also played an important role. In temple rituals, priests would recite the original creation myths, magically renewing the cosmos through their words. The pharaoh would perform ritual runs around boundary markers during festivals, magically re-establishing the borders of Egypt through both word and deed. As you settle into sleep, consider the ancient Egyptian understanding that words shape reality. The stories we tell, the names we use, the declarations we make, all of these have subtle but real effects on our world and ourselves. Perhaps there is wisdom in this ancient perspective, that our words deserve care and respect for their power to build up or break down, to heal or to harm, to create new possibilities or close them off. Let your last thoughts before sleep be words of hope and renewal, creating through your own Heka a space for peaceful rest and pleasant dreams. Like the ancient Egyptians who spoke words of protection before sleeping, surround yourself with positive intentions for the night ahead and the day to come. Now we turn to one of the most distinctive aspects of Egyptian mythology, their elaborate conception of the afterlife and the journey each soul would undertake following death. Unlike the gloomy underworld of many ancient cultures, the Egyptian afterlife offered hope for eternal joy, though the path to reach it was fraught with challenges and a final, crucial judgment. When an Egyptian died, they began a journey that mirrored Ra's nightly voyage through the Duat, the underworld. But while Ra made this journey daily, returning to the eastern horizon each morning, the deceased sought permanent residence in the field of reeds, Aru, a paradise that mirrored the best aspects of Egypt. Fertile fields, abundant food and drink, pleasurable activities, and freedom from labor, pain, or want. The journey began with proper mummification and funerary rituals. These were not merely preserving the body but transforming it into a new, divine form called the Sa. Meanwhile, various spiritual aspects of the person, the Ka, life force, Ba, personality, and Ak, transformed spirit, needed to be united in the afterlife. This complex understanding of human composition reflected Egyptian beliefs that each person was a multifaceted being, with different elements requiring different treatments after death. The actual journey through the Duat was perilous. The Book of the Dead and similar texts provided maps, instructions, and spells to help the deceased navigate this dangerous landscape. Without these texts, the soul might become lost, be consumed by fearsome entities, or fail critical tests. Some of the dangers were physical obstacles, lakes of fire to be crossed, gates guarded by knife-wielding sentinels, narrow passages where serpents lurked. Other challenges were knowledge-based. The deceased needed to know the names of gatekeepers, the correct responses to questions, and the appropriate spells for each situation. For example, one chapter of the Book of the Dead provided spells to avoid being forced to walk upside down in the afterlife, a dreaded fate that would leave the deceased disoriented and humiliated for eternity. Another spell prevented the heart from testifying against its owner during judgment. The climax of this journey was the weighing of the heart ceremony in the Hall of Two Truths, presided over by Osiris as judge of the dead. This was not merely a test but a transformation ritual, where the deceased would become an Osiris, taking on aspects of the god himself. The ceremony began with the deceased entering the vast hall where 42 divine judges awaited. Before each judge, the deceased had to declare their innocence of a specific sin. I have not stolen. I have not killed unjustly. I have not reduced the food offerings in the temples, and so on. This negative confession covered moral, religious, and social obligations. Following these declarations, the central act of judgment occurred. The deceased's heart, considered the seat of intelligence, memory, and character, was placed on one side of a great scale. On the other side sat the feather of Maat, goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, adjusted the scales while Thoth, divine scribe, stood ready to record the verdict. If the heart balanced perfectly against the feather, the deceased had lived in accordance with Maat and could proceed to paradise. But if the heart was heavier than the feather, weighed down by sin, dishonesty, or injustice, a fearsome fate awaited. Beside the scales crouched Amit, the devourer, a chimeric creature with the head of a crocodile, the forequarters of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus, combining the most dangerous animals known to Egyptians. If the heart failed its test, Amit would consume it, condemning the deceased to a second death, from which there was no return. Complete annihilation rather than eternal torment. But for the justified dead, those whose hearts balanced against the feather, a joyous welcome awaited. Osiris would greet them as one of the blessed dead, and they would join the company of gods and ancestors in the field of reeds. This afterlife paradise reflected Egyptian values and aspirations. It featured abundant harvests without the labor of farming, cool beverages without thirst, and pleasant company without strife. The deceased could transform into different forms at will, becoming a falcon soaring through the heavens, a lotus floating on tranquil waters, or resuming human form to enjoy earthly pleasures. Interestingly, the field of reeds wasn't entirely free of work. Small figurines called Ushaptis were buried with the deceased. These magical servants would answer when the gods called for labor, saying, "Here I am," and performing tasks in the owner's place. Wealthy Egyptians might have hundreds of these figures, ensuring they would never need to work in the afterlife. The Egyptians understood this afterlife journey as both individual and cosmic. Each person's passage through death mirrored the sun's nightly journey and rebirth. Just as Ra battled Apophis each night before emerging triumphant at dawn, each human soul faced trials before achieving eternal life. This connection between personal salvation and cosmic renewal gave depth to Egyptian funeral practices. When priests performed funeral rites, they weren't merely helping one individual but participating in the eternal struggle to maintain Ma'at against the forces of chaos and dissolution. For the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end but a transition. Challenging, certainly, but offering the promise of an eternal existence far better than earthly life, if one had lived properly and received the correct funerary provisions. As you drift towards sleep, that little death that we experience each night before awakening refreshed, consider the Egyptian understanding of death as transformation. Each night, like Ra, we journey through darkness before returning to light. Each period of rest prepares us for renewal. This cycle of death and rebirth plays out not just in the grand movements of the cosmos or the final passage of life, but in the small rhythms of our daily existence. Let the wisdom of these ancient beliefs comfort you as you surrender to sleep. Like the justified dead entering the field of reeds, you too can release the burdens of the day, trusting in tomorrow's rebirth. And perhaps, in your dreams, you might catch glimpses of that eternal field where souls find rest and joy beyond the trials of mortal existence. As our night of Egyptian mythology draws toward its conclusion, let us explore the magical objects that protected both gods and mortals. The amulets, talismans, and sacred symbols that channeled divine power into everyday life. For the ancient Egyptians, these weren't mere decorations but practical tools for navigating a world filled with visible and invisible dangers. The word amulet comes from the Arabic hamalet, meaning something carried, but the concept far predates this term. Egyptians called protective objects meket, nihe, or sa, words conveying protection, shelter, and divine blessing. These objects transformed the wearer, connecting them to divine power and establishing a magical barrier against harmful forces. Among the most potent and universal protective symbols was the Eye of Horus, or Wadjet. This stylized eye symbol originated from the myth of Horus's battle with Seth, where the young god lost his eye, which was later magically restored by Thoth. The healed eye became a powerful symbol of wholeness, healing, and protection. The Eye of Horus appeared everywhere in Egyptian culture. Painted on ships to ensure safe voyages, inscribed on tomb walls to guide the deceased, worn as jewelry by the living, and placed within mummy wrappings to protect the dead. Mathematically, parts of the eye symbol represented different fractions, collectively adding up to nearly one whole, symbolizing the near-perfect but never complete healing of Horus's eye. Equally ubiquitous was the Ankh, the key of life, resembling a cross with a loop at the top. Gods were frequently depicted holding this symbol by its loop, often extending it toward a pharaoh's nose, symbolically granting the breath of eternal life. The Ankh represented both mortal life and immortality, the divine gift of existence in all its forms. During the Amarna period, when Akhenaten instituted worship of the Aten, the sun disk, as the supreme deity, artistic representations showed the Aten extending multiple arms ending in ankhs toward the royal family. This imagery conveyed that life itself flowed directly from the divine to humanity through the intermediary of the pharaoh. The Djed pillar, resembling a column with horizontal bars at its top, represented stability and the backbone of Osiris. According to myth, when Isis reassembled her husband's dismembered body, his backbone became this distinctive pillar. Wearing a Djed amulet provided the steadfastness of Osiris himself, while raising a large Djed pillar during festivals symbolically renewed the stability of the kingdom. Another common protective symbol was the Tjet, or Isis knot, resembling an ankh with curved arms. Associated specifically with Isis's protective powers, this amulet was often made from red stone or glass to evoke the protective power of blood, specifically, the magical blood of Isis that protected her son Horus. Women in childbirth would clutch Tjet amulets, invoking Isis's protection during this dangerous transition. Scarab beetles held special significance, representing the god Khepri, the morning manifestation of the sun god who pushed the solar disk into the sky each dawn. Scarab amulets, some with detailed beetle carvings on top and flat surfaces below inscribed with names or protective spells, were among the most common Egyptian amulets. The largest was the heart scarab, placed over the heart of the mummified deceased to ensure it would not testify against its owner during the weighing of the heart ceremony. Beyond these universal symbols, Egyptians created amulets for specific purposes and problems. Pregnant women wore hippopotamus figures representing Tauret, goddess of childbirth. Children wore fish amulets to prevent drowning. Amulets shaped like healthy organs were placed over the corresponding body parts in mummies to ensure those organs functioned perfectly in the afterlife. The material from which an amulet was made enhanced its magical properties. Green stones like feldspar and malachite represented health and regeneration. Red carnelian and jasper evoked the protective power of blood. Lapis lazuli's deep blue mirrored the heavens and the primordial waters. Gold, considered the flesh of the gods, provided divine protection, while silver, associated with the bones of the gods and the moon, offered celestial connection. Amulets gained power through proper creation rituals. Priests would recite specific spells while crafting them, often timing this work to astrologically favorable moments. Some amulets required activation by placing them in the temple overnight, where they would absorb divine energy from the resident deity. The Book of the Dead included directions for creating and using specific amulets. For instance, a heart scarab made of green stone should be soaked in herb-infused water, set in gold, and inscribed with a specific spell before being placed on a mummy. Without these precise preparations, the amulet might fail at the crucial moment of judgment. While individuals wore amulets for personal protection, Entire buildings and cities received magical safeguards as well. Foundation deposits, collections of miniature tools, food offerings, and amulets were buried at the corners of important structures before construction began. Massive granite sphinxes guarded temple entrances, while carved protective spells encircled the outer walls of sacred precincts. The ultimate collection of protective amulets surrounded the royal mummies. Tutankhamun's mummy featured 143 objects, including a gold mask, pectoral ornaments, rings, amulets between the bandage layers, and protective symbols inscribed on the coffin itself. Each item served a specific protective or transformative purpose in the king's afterlife journey. Even words themselves functioned as amulets. Certain hieroglyphs were considered inherently powerful, carrying the essence of what they depicted. The hieroglyph for protection, SA, resembled a rolled papyrus cord and was sometimes woven into elaborate knot patterns on tomb walls, creating a net of protection through both symbol and word. Some of the most powerful amulets combined multiple protective elements. The famous Isis and young Horus amulets showed the goddess nursing her son, embodying maternal protection, divine sustenance, and the promise of legitimate succession all in one image. These were particularly valued by mothers seeking to protect their children. For the ancient Egyptians, these protective symbols weren't superstitious trinkets but practical spiritual technology. They understood the cosmos as permeated with invisible forces, both beneficial and harmful. Amulets channeled positive forces while deflecting negative ones, creating a microenvironment of divine protection around the wearer. As you prepare for sleep, imagine yourself surrounded by these ancient protective symbols. The Eye of Horus watching over you, the Ankh infusing you with vital energy, the Jed pillar providing stability beneath you, and the wings of Isis enfolding you in maternal protection. Though separated by thousands of years, the human desire for safety and divine connection remains unchanged. Perhaps place your hand over your heart for a moment, as if holding your own heart scarab, ensuring peaceful passage through the small death of sleep into the rebirth of morning. The ancient Egyptians would recognize this gesture, this acknowledgement that even in vulnerability, we carry within us the capacity for transformation and renewal. As our journey through the mythological landscape of ancient Egypt draws to a close, let us remember that for the Egyptians, endings were always new beginnings. Their understanding of time was cyclical rather than linear. Each sunset promised a sunrise. Each death contained the seed of rebirth. Each conclusion opened the way for renewal. The myths we've explored tonight exemplify this eternal cycle. Ra's daily journey through the sky and the underworld, dying at dusk only to be reborn at dawn. Osiris transformed from murdered king to lord of the afterlife, finding new purpose and power beyond death. The Eye of Ra burning with destructive fire as Sekhmet, then transmuting into Hathor's nurturing joy. Horus growing from vulnerable child to rightful king, completing the circle his father began. This cyclical perspective gave Egyptian mythology a profound resilience. Their stories didn't end with catastrophe or ultimate victory, but continued in endless variations, adaptable to changing circumstances while maintaining their essential wisdom. For over 3,000 years, these myths evolved while preserving their core truths about existence, morality, and the divine order. What wisdom can we take from these ancient tales? Perhaps it's the recognition that endings and beginnings are artificial distinctions, points we place on an eternal circle. Perhaps it's the understanding that transformation, not stasis, is the natural state of all things. Or perhaps it's the comfort of knowing that darkness, however profound, eventually yields to light. As you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself participating in this grand cosmic cycle. Like Ra entering the western horizon, you surrender to darkness not with fear, but with trust in the coming dawn. Like Osiris entering the underworld, you allow yourself to be transformed by the journey through the night. Like Horus, you carry forward the essence of what came before while creating something new. The ancient Egyptians believed that speaking the names of the dead kept them alive in memory. Tonight, by revisiting these ancient stories, we've momentarily revived the gods and goddesses of Egypt. We've spoken their names, recalled their deeds, and carried their wisdom forward into our time. May the protective wings of Isis shield you as you sleep. May the wisdom of Thoth illuminate your dreams. May the transformative power of Osiris renew your spirit. And may the golden light of Ra greet you in the morning, beginning the cycle anew. Before we part, I invite you to join our community of myth lovers. If you've enjoyed our journey through Egyptian mythology tonight, please consider subscribing to our channel for more bedtime stories from ancient civilizations. Each like and share helps preserve these timeless tales for future generations, creating an eternal cycle of storytelling that would make the ancient Egyptians proud. Until we meet again for another journey through the myths of our ancestors, may your dreams be blessed by gods both ancient and new. If you've enjoyed drifting through the starry skies of ancient Egyptian mythology with me tonight, I invite you to join our growing community of dream wanderers and myth seekers. Please take a moment to subscribe to Lost Pharaoh Lore for more extended journeys through the ancient world's most captivating stories. Every like and comment helps these timeless tales reach others who might find comfort and wonder in them too. Share this video with someone who appreciates bedtime stories that carry the wisdom of millennia. If there's a particular Egyptian deity or myth you'd like to explore more deeply in future episodes, let me know in the comments below. Perhaps you'd like to hear more about Thoth's magical knowledge, or maybe you're curious about the adventures of the celestial cow goddess Nut. Remember, the ancient Egyptians believed that speaking someone's name kept them alive in memory. By sharing these stories, we're participating in a tradition of remembrance that spans thousands of years, keeping these gods and their wisdom alive in our modern world. Until our next journey together beneath the watchful eyes of these ancient deities, may Thoth fill your dreams with wisdom, may Hathor bring you joy, and may you wake refreshed under Ra's golden light. Thank you for listening, and peaceful dreams to you all.